explodes, the other collapses onto the grass. And when the whistle finally blows, the man who should have been world champion twice over is sitting on the pitch, alone, in tears, while 19 years and one photograph away, the teenager who just beat him stops his own celebration cold. He turns. He walks straight through the chaos, past his own teammates lifting the trophy behind him, and goes to find the one man in the stadium he came here to beat. What happens in the next 10 seconds is why football people are already calling this the most symbolic scene the sport has produced in years. And almost nobody watching live understood the full weight of it until the replays started circulating hours later. This is that story. Before we get into it, if you watch this final live, tell us in the comments the exact second you realized what was happening, and if you followed Messi's whole career, hit subscribe, because what we're about to break down is bigger than one hug. Let's start with what's actually confirmed. Spain beat Argentina 1-0 after extra time in the 2026 final. It was Messi's second World Cup final defeat, after Argentina's 2014 loss to Germany. This time, the man who beat him was on the opposite bench, 19-year-old Lamine Yamal. And here's the detail that turned this into more than just a result. Messi and Yamal became the first players to start on opposite sides of a World Cup final with a 20-year age gap between them. Not close to it, not roughly a generation. An actual, verified, first-in-history 20-year gap. That's not commentary, that's a historical fact. Fans online picked up on it immediately. As one widely shared reaction put it, watching the two of them share that moment felt like a legend and a future legend sharing a nice moment. Another comment that spread just as fast summed up the poetry of it. Someone being consoled by the very kid he inspired is its own kind of full-circle story. And this final itself carried its own historical weight before a ball was even kicked. This was the first ever World Cup final between the reigning champions of Europe and the reigning champions of South America. Spain's Euros title against Argentina's Copa America crown, settled on the biggest stage the sport has. Argentina, for their part, were chasing something almost nobody has done in the modern game. Back-to-back World Cup titles, a feat only achieved by Italy in 1934 and 1938, and Brazil in 1958 and 1962. This wasn't just Messi's story or Yamal's story. It was two footballing institutions colliding, with two generational talents standing at the center of it. Now here's the part that made the loss sting even more. This wasn't Messi getting outclassed. This was arguably the best World Cup of his entire career, statistically. Go through the road to the final and it reads like a highlight reel that shouldn't belong to a 39-year-old. In the group stage, Messi scored a hat-trick on his 200th international appearance, equaling a long-standing record for World Cup goals. In the round of 32 against Cape Verde, Argentina were dragged to extra time by a debutant nation before finally escaping 3-2. In the round of 16, Argentina fell behind Egypt 2-0, and it was Messi who assisted the first comeback goal before scoring the equalizer himself 4 minutes later. In the semi-final against England, Argentina trailed with time running out before two late goals completed the comeback, both created by Messi assists. By kickoff of the final, Messi had 8 goals and 4 assists for the tournament, and he was tied for the most goals of any player in the entire competition. This wasn't a farewell tour. This was a 39-year-old man playing some of the best football of his life, dragging his country through 3 separate comebacks just to reach the final. And it still wasn't enough. 1 goal, in extra time, was the difference. Sport rarely writes stories with clean, satisfying endings. This was proof of that. Now flip to Yamal's side of this. He was born in July 2007. Messi left Barcelona in 2021. Yamal didn't make his first team debut until 2023, which means this 19-year-old grew up idolizing a player he never once shared a locker room with, never trained alongside, never got to learn from directly. Everything he knew about Messi, he knew the way millions of other kids his age did, from screens, from highlight reels, from stories. And just days before the final, Messi was asked directly about him. He didn't dodge the question or give a generic answer. He said plainly that Lamine is a fantastic player, and that he'd followed him closely because of his connection to Barcelona, the club he said he'd always wished the best for. Think about what that means from Yamal's side. The guy whose posters were probably on his wall as a kid basically told the world's media on the record that he rates him. That's not something every 19-year-old gets to hear from his childhood hero before facing him in the biggest game of both their lives. And it's worth remembering how fast Yamal's own rise has been. He wasn't some unknown kid who suddenly appeared at this World Cup. 2 summers before this final, at Euro 2024, a then 16-year-old Yamal was already making history, becoming the youngest player ever to score at a men's European Championship, and doing it against a backdrop of doubters who openly questioned whether the stage was too big for him. He answered those doubts on the pitch then, the same way he answered them again here, at 19, in a World Cup final, against the very player he'd grown up idolizing. This wasn't a fluke run for Yamal. It was the continuation of a pattern. A teenager who keeps arriving at the sport's biggest moments and refusing to shrink from them. This is where the story stops being simple and starts being complicated in the best way. You'd expect a teenager to be intimidated facing Messi in a World Cup final. Instead, he helped beat him. You'd expect the winning side to only celebrate. Instead, their brightest young star pulled away from his own celebration to go find the losing captain. You'd expect Messi, a 9-time Copa America and World Cup winner, a man with nothing left to prove, to want to disappear after a loss like this. Instead, cameras caught him sitting on the pitch, absorbing it, present for it, not hiding from it. You'd expect bitterness between the man who ended an era and the man whose era was ending. Instead, what the world saw described afterward was the opposite, the veteran congratulating the teenager once photographed in his arms. Every expectation flipped. And then there's the number that doesn't make sense no matter how you look at it. 20 years. That's the gap between the 2 men who started this final on opposite sides. 20 years is long enough for a baby in a photograph to grow up, become a professional footballer, get called up to a national team, win a Euros, and then stand across a World Cup final from the exact man holding him in that photo and beat him. In almost any other era of football, a 39-year-old doesn't start a World Cup final at all, let alone drive his team to it with 8 goals along the way. But the numbers back it up in ways that sound almost invented. Messi entered the final having reached the final in 8 of the 13 major tournaments he's played for Argentina, a 61.5% rate most players never approach in an entire career. He now holds 33 goal contributions across 33 career World Cup matches, a number no one else in the sport's history has touched. He remains, going into this final, the only player to score in the group stage, round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, and final of a single World Cup, a feat he first pulled off in 2022 and one he's now added to. The math doesn't add up by normal standards, and yet it happened, in front of the entire world, on July 19, 2026, against a teenager born 2 decades after him. You don't need invented dressing room quotes to feel the weight of this one. The reaction was loud and real, everywhere, immediately. Across football media, the phrase that kept repeating was some version of a torch being passed. One major outlet's headline captured it directly. Greatness comes full circle. Fans reacted the same way. Some focused purely on the symbolism.